Hey, pleasure seekers. Happy holidays, YouTubers. Welcome to Never Had the Pleasure, where we watch movies that we've never seen before.
For better or worse.
Ooh.
Tonight, we're here to talk about four things, actually.
It's a blowout.
He's the blowout time of the bar. We're here to talk about all of the Grinches that have ever been, and maybe, just maybe, where we think he's gonna go next.
I know where he's going next.
Is it space?
We'll talk about it soon.
Any particular reason why we're talking about this?
A couple weeks ago, NBC had their latest in a series of disastrous live musicals. I guess it can be seen as this year's Cats with a much smaller production budget. I think it appeals to the Cats audience.
It did not appeal to this member of the Cats audience. In a normal episode, we encourage people to watch along with us. We took this on so that you don't have to.
Just watch our video.
It's better that way. Sometimes dead is better.
That is better.
How do you think we should tackle this?
I think chronologically. That's the order we went in, and that's the order of, interest.
Fair. Diminishing returns rivaled only by the Terminator franchise. It's less of a steady decline and more of a roller coaster.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Okay, so going into this comprehensive survey of the multifaceted world of Whoville, perhaps Tolkien-esque. Where were you at with the Grinch?
Just as a general
Sure.
IP, I like the original cartoon. A half-hour television special, probably about all the juice you can squeeze from that book. Pretty directly adapting the material. It's not changing up the language all that much. Fairly faithful adaptation of the story's visuals. Tall, lopsided houses. The big exception being that, the Grinch is green. You're not just gonna have a black and white cartoon.
I mean, who would want to watch shabby, rough, black and white line art across the entire adaptation of a literary work? Who would, for example, want to witness a turkey being hoisted?
And then, slicing it off, and we'll get to it. Boris Karloff is the perfect narrator.
Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not.
Chuck Jones of Looney Tunes fame, a lifetime Looney Tune boy right here.
Music sung by Thurl Ravenscroft of The Haunted Mansion.
I do like the song. I like his version of the song.
Partly because of its length, the focus is appropriately the Grinch himself, as opposed to the residents of Whoville and their politics. A good handful of animated bits with the Grinch make the special for me. The thing from this that The Simpsons references, therefore iconic. Grinch going who?
That big devious grin on his hair does the curling thing, and it's very Chuck Jones.
The smile?
Yeah, no, that's a terrible non-impression.
Front desk clerk from Home Alone 2 smile.
We'll be going back to Tim Curry in a little bit. The visual characterization of the Grinch is definitely the movie's strong suit. I think, and this is going to be relevant to all three other versions, where me and the Grinch fall out is over the Who's and Whoville. Ugly, loud, garish, trite. Really puts me in the shoes of the Grinch. I think he's too soft on Whoville. Suffice to say, I wasn't exactly going into this with super high expectations.
It's a light eggnog compared to fat laden.
The curdled eggnog.
That is to come.
Oh no, I got eggnog on myself. What do I do? In the spirit of the season, let Grinch 66 off the hook. I have no qualm with it.
The peak of what you can get from an adaptation of The Grinch. It's short and tells the story.
There's maybe only one other iteration that can meet that faint praise. Should we have
Some
our
more to drink?
standard... Well, I feel like our standard ratings are
Oh.
not really a fit for this format. I'm going to rate the different Grinches on a scale of how many times would I rather watch Cats than have to watch this again.
Okay.
Yeah, like I would rather watch The Grinch 1
From the 60s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Than Cats.
Okay.
So I guess that's that's as high as this scale goes.
I will co-sign that. But if you feel like watching the Cats, you can watch along with us up there.
Yeah. Grinch number 2. Grinch 2K, a Ron Howard directed Jim Carrey vehicle.
He is steering us.
He is running me off the fucking road.
See, now, this one really seems to do a number on you. I feel like maybe I'm a little bit better, like, logically comprehending that, like, the people who made this movie thought that this was charming and, like, doubled down on his improv and ad-libbing. It was, like, torture to sit through, but I logically could figure out why it was there. You seem to really crack.
I definitely did. I mean, I don't want to let this movie beat me. The mind of the person that enjoys something like this is so foreign to me. I just don't know how to bridge that gulf. So, you know, like how you feel about Star Wars Episode 2 and La La Land? The Grinch 2K is the worst of both of those combined.
I totally understand that on paper.
It doesn't even have Natalie Portman's midriff.
Who needs that when you have Christine Baranski horny all throughout? She carried me through it.
She would have carried me through it if there had been more of her.
Anything for her to do.
She was criminally underutilized.
Not as much as Molly Shannon. It's not the most obvious problem with this movie, but like a major one for me is they have the both of them as like
rivals. And they set that up.
And just like nothing happens.
No.
Christine Baranski, one of my favorites. And Molly Shannon, based off of the Santa Claus 2, I would say a queen of Christmas.
So totally Yuletide, taking a sleigh ride. Good. Santa shirts, reindeer skirts. Mm-hmm. Put up a tree, sports on TV.
Is that one Fred Claus or is that another one?
Fred Claus is a separate film. This movie is 4 times the length of the TV special. And almost a full 2 hours. And just like drops plot threads left, right, and center. So many characters and so many different interpersonal things. Where does all that time go? Well, there's a lot more with like the Who's themselves, and there's a hell of a lot of Jim Carrey. Any of it. They don't use their time with the Who's efficiently. Like they do need to pick a story. The story that they come closest to picking is like Cindy Lou Who's dad. Other than Cindy Lou Who, he's the one that gets the most screen time. He's the one who gets to like stand up to the mayor at the end. Who even are you? Why are you in this? If they were gonna like make this about the politics of Whoville, like do that. I don't know if I want to see that movie. HBO Max in 2023. Whoville, from the creator of Pennyworth. There is enough room in this movie for our time with the Who's to be like tripled in length, and also our time with the Grinch to be like doubled in length, and so grating that it feels even longer. You have such like an animated performer. So many of the like visual hallmarks of the cartoon are just like forgotten about. He's going so hammy and so broad and like not hitting any of the sort of like diabolical nuance. Yeah, like the Grinch like slithering around the floor like a snake is one of my favorite moments from the cartoon. Get Jim Carrey on a treadmill slithering. One of the most iconic shots of the Grinch in the cartoon original is like this devious smile coming over his face, and his whole face and all of his features sort of like feed into this
perfect image of diabolical evilness right then as like, why was Tim Curry not the live action Grinch?
Yeah, he would have been good.
Particularly with like Jim Carrey squandering like that side of the character.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't really like revel in his like diabolical nature. The interminable scenes with the Grinch just like muttering about his cave.
I felt like I was going out of my body. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm putting my foot down. I will absolutely not tolerate people disparaging Batman and Robin. Well, this movie exists.
This movie exists, and by the way, there's like nostalgia for it and admiration of this being one of the last big budget movies of this scale with like actual sets and effects, kind of the last pre-green screen movie.
That came at a cost of $120 million.
I assume Jim Carrey got quite the paycheck out of this. This is him at his like most bankable, and he is on screen in heavy makeup the entire time.
It goes beyond cringe into like a true affront to human nature.
Sean had to take a break, everybody. You and his makeup person who ascribes his behavior on set as to why he began therapy. He apparently was quite the asshole.
Oh, I thought you meant just like having to be around the performance for months.
Part of being a good comedian has to be with like self-restraint. Jim Carrey, especially at this time, has no restraint. For as much money must have been sunk in for some decently impressive sets and props and costumes and makeup, this is such an ugly movie. It's not shot in a way that makes you like, I didn't have any like awe or wonder, wasn't charmed by Whoville.
Yeah, you're right. It's a profoundly ugly movie. I think
And like claustrophobic too. As
Yes!
much as this is like a giant set and everything, so much of the movie is in just like one town square.
yeah, it even has these like tacky digital wipes.
Like very 2000s like music video like
Yeah.
like,
Whatever sort of chronic issues Ron Howard has with ugly underlit movies. I guess there's plenty of other ugliness in this movie to talk about, including the facial prosthetics on the Who's. Rick Baker doing this movie, I would compare to like Dean Koondy doing Jack and Jill after Jurassic Park and like Halloween. I'd say
yeah, it's a
like,
drop off.
yeah, the Grinch's facial prosthetic looks fine, and that it allows him to act with his face as much as he'd like.
As much as I don't like Jim Carrey in this role, like it looks pretty good.
Yet another example of how sometimes just by doing one's job, one can enable evil.
On Rick Baker's part.
Yes. Carrey collaborator wisely. One character who gets little to no facial prosthetics. Cindy Lou Who. Who gets like a pair of buck teeth, but that's about it. That's the tactic they go with for Christine Baranski too, right? Like
She's a very natural beauty.
the shimmering green, like a heavy eyeshadow, like
It's natural.
And Poison Ivy vibe.
That brings us to little Taylor Momsen, little Jenny Humphrey. She's not given much to do, but she's more of a character here than in the animated movie, for sure. They gotta fill out 2 hours somehow.
I guess they only had the 80 raw minutes of Jim Carrey ad-libs that they used. Presumably, if they'd had any more, they just would have used that. Yeah, I think she's fine. Coming after the heyday of young, intrepid, wise beyond their years, female leads. That's sort of like Winona Ryder, Christina Ricci. Golden Age is not doing her any favors, but being in this movie is doing her favors, because all you have to do to be my second favorite character in this movie is just not great in every frame that you're on screen. We're living in an age now where Beauty and the Beast is catching a lot of flack for like putting the burden on young women to fix the antisocial men in their life. Why is it Lil Cindy Lou's job to bridge the social gulf between Whoville and this cantankerous old jerk.
The part of this movie that kind of like adds the most to like this story are the flashbacks that we get of young Grinch. Baby Grinch was very cute.
Sure.
Looked like baby Sinclair from Dinosaur.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Very not that mama. Motivation on the Grinch's part.
Sure.
A victim of bullying. Nothing.
No, not really. I mean, it was pretty rote.
I mean, again, the Grinch works better when you don't like need to explain like why he is evil. This is a lesson that we get every time they make an origin story for like Hannibal. We've yet to dive into that.
Dracula.
You've got Baranski and Molly Shannon here. They just have like nothing to do. Seems like such a waste. There just like isn't room for them for some reason. Only room for Jim Carrey.
It's so illustrative of the complete lack of thought in structuring this movie or like laying out where it's gonna go. You cast these two names, you pay for them. Like Molly Shannon in the year 2000 was probably not super cheap hire. I have literally no idea what Christine Baranski had been in before, like The Good Wife. She's one of the headliners in the cast. She has this introductory scene with Molly Shannon. And then like that's basically the only scene that either of their characters really has to themselves.
We get a lot of Baranski whenever the Grinch is like causing havoc around the town. Baranski's always looking at him lustingly.
In the middle background behind Jeffrey Tambor's shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, like my eyes go to her, so like I had to find time in those scenes.
Where Baranski goes, the eye follows.
That's right. I wish she had kind of gotten a bit like Angelica Houston and the Witches, gotten a little bit turned on.
She did get a little bit turned on, but it was really more of a Zenyatta top vibe. The like puzzling setup of a little feud between them that goes nowhere is just one example of the closest I can get to trying to make like a coherent structural critique of the movie that isn't just me being like, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. It's just like constantly picking up and dropping plot threads, and anytime it threatens to become even the slightest bit interesting, oh no, we're not gonna do that. That's just going on the pile. There's like Molly Shannon and Christine Baranski. There's
local Who politics.
There's like a sort of like vague hint that they're like queering the Grinch. In his introductory scene, he like comes out in this like sheer black mini kimono. You know, confirmed bachelor, outsider to society.
Does a lot of like
yeah, there's a lot of hip work, doing his tire shtick, talking to his dog, eating out of boredom. But nope, they just like immediately drop that. Leave me questioning whether it was even slightly intended in the first place. It's just kind of like, oh, we might do this. Don't know, but we can.
Kind of on that tip, he mentioned like very much in passing that like all of their gifts each year always ends up like in the trash in his lair at the top of the mountain. I don't know, maybe run with that a bit.
If the Grinch 2K was coming out now, they might do more with that kind of Whoville is being threatened, a trash avalanche is gonna wipe out the town, and then they find out at the end that like it wasn't the Grinches doing it all, it was all their fault, it's all their trash.
Maybe you'll get it in the sequel that's been announced for this movie.
They ask you how you are, you just have
with
to say
Carrie
that you're
returning
fine when you're not really fine.
There's more shtick. I think it's safe to say we will not be reviewing it on this channel.
If this video gets 1,000 likes.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean.
This video gets 1,000 likes. This will be an all Grinch all the time channel. Yeah, they're making a sequel just in time for them to have demolished the Whoville sets on the Universal backlot for decades, had like ruined the Bates Motel. Now they're gone. One thing that really irked me in this movie, we spend a lot of time with Cindy Lou Who like interacting with the Grinch. She knows the Grinch pretty intimately. I shouldn't say that.
She did spend a lot of time unaccompanied in his bachelor's cavern. She might know him Better than he knows himself.
The Grinch shows up stealing Christmas, and she thinks he's Santa Claus.
In full view of his face. A very distinctive look that was like the subject of great mocking in his childhood. Not a face you easily forget, because he's living a sort of Phantom of the Opera life.
Does she have like face blindness? He's a creature.
Santa, what's Christmas really about?
Vengeance!
Presents. And his fib fooled the child.
Bitch, you know him.
I feel like I need to close the door.
Before we do so, I just want to say, Mariah Carey, release your version of Where Are You Christmas? Shout out to one of my favorite podcasters for championing this cause.
2020 has been a good year for obscure Mariah Carey offcut material. That would be quite the note to go out on. What's your ratio of cat viewings to Grinch 2K viewings?
I would rewatch Cats 2 times to avoid this. Logically, like, this just makes sense to me. It's not pleasant to watch, but like, I survived with my sanity intact.
I would be willing to watch Cats 500 times to never have to watch this movie again.
Grinch 2K comes out full 18 years later, and we get the start of the deluge of Grinch content.
They're coming faster and faster.
The next movie in the Grinch canon is 2018's animated Grinch, which, despite being done by the makers of Minions, was quite a nice little vacation for me.
Any port in rough waters, I guess. It was fine. And that has never looked so good.
This one is mercifully short and knows that it needs to give Cindy Lou Who more of a character.
This is the one that does the most things that make sense. You can imagine like a group of human beings making the decisions that led to this movie.
Yeah.
Which like I can't do for the Grinch 2K or the musical.
Yes. This movie like kind of fundamentally changes like what the character is.
No.
Well, that's not very nice.
He's like one therapy session away from being a part of their society, basically. This doesn't feel like the most pure Grinch story to me. It's certainly not like reflective of the Dr. Seuss book in terms of the language and the look.
Yeah, this is basically Whoville
It was
as
just
like Boulder,
pleasant.
Colorado.
There is not that much Seuss-esque rhymes here. The Who's are more human, but in contrast with the other like feature-length movies and specials that we watched, the most effective as a movie. You got quite a visceral reaction to Donna.
I'm glad that single mother nurses now have their very own version of the Grinch to bring their kids to. I guess it's a choice that makes sense.
Everything runs right on time. Years of practice and design. Spin and polish till it shines. He thinks he'll keep her.
She looked awful. Like her haircut and her like constant usage of like a sweatband on her forehead.
Really? You're wearing that sweatband to Christmas dinner, lady?
The choices. Throughout the movie, I kept thinking to myself, like, who's narrating this? It's Pharrell. Such a weird choice. Like,
It's like Boris Karloff, Anthony Hopkins.
it's kind of like established that like the narrator is like a horror legend kind of. I don't know where like Pharrell fits in with that like lineage.
Yeah, it's just another piece of the puzzle of this movie making very different tonal choices, being well adjusted and pretty toothless.
He didn't add anything.
But like, isn't this movie kind
It's
of
not like
the
like
Grinch that didn't add anything? This Grinch is kind of like an A student who like knows how to write to the prompt, but like doesn't really have anything
I don't
to
know,
say.
like they had like Angela Lansbury doing a voice. Like how
Oh,
come
yeah, that
she
was
couldn't have been the
weird.
narrator? It probably would have taken her like an extra 20 minutes. The cutest Max of the bunch. Just
Not a high bar.
Just you wait for the musical. That was something else. I think it helped that he had very realistic woofs and barks and
Yeah,
such.
crucial.
The Grinch kind of has a point here. His backstory as like
Yes.
a completely like ignored orphan, giving some Christmas cheer to the orphans is not a part of the traditions of this society, which really makes you think about our own.
It does.
I think they're due for a reckoning.
So
Goodbye, Donna.
If this movie was getting a sequel, which I think makes a hell of a lot more sense than the Jim Carrey one, not least of all because this movie cost half as much and made almost twice as much. But yeah, if this movie was getting the sequel, maybe he would go in a Baneward direction.
I don't know about that.
It'd certainly be warranted. Jeez. Guys, I'm going to leave a real close read of the social injustices of Whoville in the capable hands of Big Joel. But I guess just to like dip my toes in, the more you see this story play out again and again, the more you see that like, yeah, the Grinch kind of has a point, trying to live his life.
He's living in like Christmas Wonderland village, basically.
In every version presented as a complete monoculture, all of these movies are just kind of like thinly veiled versions of middle class Christian normies telling social outcasts who more often than not have very valid bones to pick, basically telling them that they should smile more. There's like this moment the narrator is saying,
Pharrell.
If he did what she did, would he feel what she felt?
Isn't that like the outsider's question that like rings down through the ages? And this movie answers that by saying like, yes, there are no fundamental differences between people. And if he just acts like they do and smiles like they do and gets on board with their cultural norms, then he will feel better and everything will be right in his life. It's also weird and unsettling how thoroughly it gets to have its cake and eat it too at the end in every version. Well, it turns out that while we've structured our entire society around giving each other gifts at Christmas, they're not what really matters. What really matters is whatever, just sort of like the spirit of Christmas. But we still always get all of our gifts back. That kind of led me to this thought experiment. What would you actually have to change about this to make it fit like a kind of Kirk Cameron prosperity gospel? And I think the answer is basically nothing.
I look at what Christmas is. This cannot be what God wants. This is all wrong.
No. You're all wrong. Now see Christmas through new eyes.
The biggest ham and the richest butter. Hot chocolate, lights, giant hams.
Angels we have burned all night, sweetly singing o'er the plains.
We're getting down to this, what's at the core of the Grinch's hatred. Not really a question that needs to be asked, but these movies are giving you explanations.
These movies have taken on terms that require an answer to that question by not being 20-minute long cartoons. The 2018 version is the one that's going to face the closest scrutinizing because it's the only one that's coherent enough to interrogate.
I think it like most tries to defend the Grinch. This movie twists things even further from like the simplicity of the original. Again, picture book. The only form of this story that makes sense is the one in which you don't like need to interrogate these questions.
As a society, we seem to stubbornly refuse leaving it.
We're just constantly asking what makes the Grinch tick.
The first movie, essentially he has like a noise pollution complaint. The second one, he's been like bullied to the extent that he's defined his entire persona by reacting against their performative joyfulness. The third one, he's a fundamentally intact person, just needs someone to talk to all over the place.
What's your Cats to Grinch ratio here?
Having just watched this, I guess, I would watch Cats once over this, but for viewings 3 through infinity, probably The Grinch. I feel like Cats would reward a second viewing, but after that,
I will always remember the anger I felt at Judi Dench at the end, lecturing me about how to speak to cats and the respect I should be giving to cats. I would 100% rather watch this than Cats again. Okay, so our final Grinch on our docket today is the 2020 musical that was just broadcast. The Grinch, the musical,
Dr.
live.
Seuss is The Grinch, the musical, etc. I feel like I am having the response to this that you had to The Grinch 2K. This isn't for me. It was never going to be for me, but I guess it's okay that it exists.
No, I mean, like, this is an awful musical. Like a colossal disaster with, like, interminable songs.
I feel like by this point in the night, any experience was just gonna kind of wash over me. I had a basically constant desire to check where we were in the runtime.
It's destroying my calm in my mind, in my eardrums, distressing.
It kind of just felt like all of the songs were the same.
Yeah.
Like,
Who likes Christmas? Who's like Christmas? Who likes Christmas? Who's like Christmas? It's a season to be crazy.
We'd like flip from the Who's singing about how much they like celebrating Christmas together in a completely tuneless song. To The Grinch.
Quiet Christmas Eve, the whole Christmas season.
Switching back and forth until 90 minutes had been up and we were done.
this had the vibe to me of videos on YouTube where it's like an AI hearing a sample of a song and like generating more of it.
In the shape of an
I couldn't sing a single line of any of the songs in this back to you if my life depended.
I mean, I could, because the songs repeated the same lines over and over again, and then the same songs were repeated over and over again. It's not like it like jumps from genre to genre, or like we get interesting like dancing. Have a Who Christmas festival and get some like break dancers in there or something. Do something, anything. Somebody who did do something here was our star, the teacher from Glee.
18 years, she got one of your kids, got you for 18 years.
Star and producer. We took a bath on that. I don't think this did very well.
9 to 5, better come my check.
These productions where we have front row access, the makeup and sets and everything look as awful as they possibly can, but also Broadway style acting and performance crumble in front of your eyes.
We'll be serving traditional Whoville roast beef.
Oh, yucky!
Matthew Morrison is somebody from theater who must be sufficient enough to like transition into a career in Hollywood, but like this was awful. So much just like deep breathing and like moaning and
really
again like
back there.
telegraphing his performance to like the back row.
I'm so glad someone's made a big effort to mock me. I'm mad.
Dude, you don't need to do that. The camera's like right there. The Who's to me here graded the most.
This is the version where Whoville feels the least like a real society.
This just ramped up the feeling of like claustrophobia.
Amplifying the like visual claustrophobia. There's also this kind of like social claustrophobia. It's so closed in on just this group of like 30 people who like don't feel like they live anywhere. Or,
Yeah,
like have lives outside of this never ending, very stereotypical Broadway chord progression.
Like a full half of this musical at least are numbers with this Who family and the Who village. Just like the same bare bones set.
I could not
talking
tell
about
you.
Christmas and we love Christmas and we gotta get to Christmas. Grandma Who baking her Grandma Who pies, talking about the joys they'll have on Christmas morning.
We love you for watching, but this is for New York.
Oh, the Who pudding we'll eat, and the Who pudding treats. It's half of the musical.
It had the like emotional, aesthetic, choreographic complexity of like a Gap ad. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It did not have the choreographic complexity of a Gap ad or the aesthetic.
The internet had quite the reaction to the makeup and look of the Grinch here. Do you have anything you want to get off your chest?
Just like a vague fan theory. Sorry, fan is not the right word. Like a vague theory that this Grinch is the offspring of Jim Carrey and Christine Baranski. Because like he's doing a lot of similar like hands on hips.
Does this make me look fat?
And sort of lusty Christine Baranski breathing.
Does that make me lonely? Kind? No, that makes me free.
Because like there's so much like dancing, if like this hair piece just like completely falls off, it's live, so they kind of have to go a little bit more safe. The Grinch can't look that great here. Yeah.
I guess likewise for the various Maxes.
It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas.
This looks awful, and that's because it was awful. There were definitely like funny visuals that will be here. The moments here where I had the most fun was in like a so bad it's good vein, and like as much as Matthew Morrison puts in an awful performance here, in that vein when he addresses the audience and is like,
Stop grinning. We're not here to enjoy ourselves. I hate your couch.
I like that. I liked his like disguise when he's out in Whoville.
Oh yeah. You're describing things that I would have liked in other circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, that is like surrounded by interminable musical numbers and so many like cringy Jim Carrey-esque jokes coming from the Grinch as well. There's like an awful fart bit here.
Again, like...
Did you watch this?
How dare you?
I never need to see Matthew Morrison as the Grinch like rocking out to like a Christmas tree again.
Again.
Okay. Flying solo here, folks. That's how much you checked out, eh?
I guess, yeah.
All right.
I mean, I remember like the couch gag and the turkey. I don't know. I was more focused on like the haunting specter of old Max.
This version takes a different approach with the narrator. It's a wise old version of the Grinch's dog Max.
Have you heard a more awfully monstrous idea?
Talk about a hangdog expression. He seemed very thoroughly sad.
It's the dog.
Old man.
Yes. Why not make him the kind of like fun dad kind of Max? He just seems so like, oh, I sure learned a lot from living through this. I've come to view life this way. Why not just have him be like, let me tell you the story of this crazy guy I used to know.
Wait a minute, where are you going? The movie isn't over yet. Don't you want to know what happened to everybody?
And like just kind of have it be fun.
In theory, like making Max more of a character when you're, again, extending a 30-minute story into 90 minutes, that's not like an awful approach to take. There's no room for him as a character in the 2001 because it had to be all Jim Carrey all the time.
Yeah.
But like having two characters in those scenes helps you prevent that from happening. But yeah, like I didn't need the musical number going through what Max was like as like a teenage dog.
I'm not moving!
And as a kid dog.
There is magic everywhere this time of year.
Reflective of this entire production. No, thank you. I don't need this.
Let's not. Please not. Why not?
having Max be like a human being also gave me this vibe of like a sub-dom relationship between him and the Grinch throughout, not helped by Matthew Morrison's constant like moaning.
Please don't.
Please, sir. We've had plenty more highs, all thanks to my master.
Putting it that way, even kind of visually, he had a bit of a Gloria Swanson Sunset Boulevard, like dom sub, where it's not about sort of like physical, it's about the mental and the emotional and like the social hold that they have over each other. Even like in the performance, kind of felt like there was some of that Norma Desmond vibe.
I forgot to tell you what Matthew Morrison cites as his most clear inspiration here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker.
Pardon me? That's so
that
weird.
He tried to approach it with the same sense of frivolity and chaos as Joaquin. Did it work?
I don't know what to do with that other than just kind of set it aside. I'd say he misread the performance in The Joker.
This musical so easily can be edited into one of those videos where like Mary Poppins is a horror film. There are some terrifying images here.
Haunting, misbegotten souls traipsing in front of our eyes.
Mama Who gave really good like get me out of here faces like all throughout. She did not want to be there.
Same, lady.
Speaking of like lasting cursed images, every commercial break we would always pause on these very disturbing shots of these motionless figures caught in this awful display. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention the two members of Whoville who were also like stagehands making announcements in the village.
Special in the next hour on Whatchamahoos.
One of them during one of the musical numbers was just like not singing. Younger Max,
portrayed of course by the Out of Work We Work founder.
He just did so many like straight to the camera like
They call me Tartuffe, a precocious trickster am I.
disturbing every time. I don't mind it for giving this awful musical some character, but I understand why this might not have appealed to the kids out there.
It had such a wide hip acceptance agenda to me.
They looked bizarre, but like logically, I understand like they were trying to go for like a stage visual to like make them look very exaggeratedly Who-like. But like that's a problem when your like stage production isn't a stage production, it's a taped special. We're seeing everything very close up.
Agreed. It's just like a pretty fundamental mismatch of medium and content. The jowls on old Max were ghoulish.
Everybody's got such wide asses covered.
I don't think it's fair or cool to just like keep dumping on what theater kids want, and
I mean like
they should be ashamed of themselves. But like I also feel like with Cats that also all of those things are kind of true, and like this sucks.
Well, I mean like there is good theater out there. This just is not it. Same thing with Cats. These are both awful musicals.
I love being one of a kind.
On that note, Cats to Grinch ratio.
I think like 3-1.
I would rather watch Cats, I would say 4 times over this. This was just like a real literal testing of my patience.
So, roughly 7 hours of Grinching later, what did we learn?
Oh my god. Simple stories with simple charms should be kept simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
This has been exhausted, people. Back away. Let it rest.
It's such a perfect microcosm of like the broader issues with intellectual property and like retreading a source material that like never really had that much to give in the first place. You know how sometimes they make movies out of like board games. It's like if we were on like our,
I feel like
remake of Battleship.
I feel like studios are always threatening to make movies about board games.
When I feel like I'm nitpicking something, I try to take a step back and be like, if you fixed all these little issues, how much does it change the value of the underlying work? Yeah, you could fix the like moire effect on the backdrop in the Grinch musical. You could brighten up the colors in Whoville and the Jim Carrey. Do any of these changes like really fundamentally add to what you're going to get from the experience? The answer is a resounding no, and I don't care. They just shouldn't have been made. Like a perfect version of the TV musical Grinch is still just like not something that has a lot of value.
Yeah. On that note, I hope you had more fun with this video than we did watching these movies.
We'll do what we can.
Rather than recommending something outside of this canon, I think I will say the original cartoon is perfectly enjoyable, family fare, absolutely something that I could watch every year. And I guess basically have 2018 one, perfectly acceptable if you want more Grinch.
Sure,
I guess there are people out there who want that. Otherwise, just back away. With that, say happy holidays.
It's a wrap on Never Had the Pleasure 2020.
We're going to take a bit of a Christmas break here, but we will be back in the new year.
I feel like we've worked out the most glaring of our tech issues. We're ready now to start doing some of our
wish lists.
Yeah, we made it through what we chose to be our capstone viewing experience of this year.
And all we have to show is a new drinking problem for you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays. Goodbye.
Angels we have burned on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strain.
Good night.